Check 1, 2. Check. Check 1, 2. Mic is on. Very good. Good evening, everyone. We're going to be starting in just a few moments here. Just a few words of safety announcement. If you would, take a look around, notice the exit signs in the event of an emergency or a fire alarm. We'll likely exit. Recommended exit is straight back the way we came into the cafeteria, left to the vestibule, and left out to the parking lot so that we can regroup and make sure that we have everyone. Also, make sure tonight, if you are going to ask a question, and Mr. Taylor will reiterate this later, it's very important that we capture the audio from this evening. We are broadcasting live, so anyone that would like to speak, please come up to a microphone. We won't be able to capture your audio from the crowd. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Want to make sure that you can hear us. My name is Pete Dixit. I'm Executive Director of Facilities Management and Strategic Planning for Baltimore County Public School. Before I start, I do want to publicly apologize for the technical glitch we had last time. It wasn't planned. We were prepared, and we still don't know what happened. So I know all of you have busy schedule. You take your time to come here, and when something like that happens, we feel bad about it, and I'd like to personally apologize for that. Also, I'd like to acknowledge presence of our board member, Mr. Rod McMillian, who's been so supportive of us for this school and for all schools. So thank you. Mr. McMillian is vice chair. He's active participant in the facilities committee and so supportive of it. So thank you very much. Also, it is nice to see Miss Jackie Brewster, who we have worked with before and who is such an outstanding advocate for education and especially education for kids in this part of the county. So thank you for coming. Thank you for all your support, and it means a lot to us, and it means a lot to kids in this area. So I wanted to say that. So this is the first meeting second time because of the technical glitch, and it is a continuous conversation. We hope to have this conversation and a follow-up at least one more time. And depending on what the questions are, we'll continue to have dialogue either with all of you, with some of you if you designate, or with Mr. Rod McMillian and Jackie and some of the folks in the area council that we communicate with in the past. So last year, if you remember, we had this multi-year improvement plan for all schools done by an independent consultant. And the purpose of that plan was to highlight the issue in different parts of the county and see how we can resolve it together. One of the issues that is in the southeast is the high school issue, what we call. And even though we have built some outstanding schools in this part of the county, elementary, and this facility here, did renovation to Patapsco, there are still more students coming, and there are still schools that need improvement. So this is part of that high school improvement communication. So my IPAS had recommended that we take a deeper dive into the high school piece that they had for Southeast and also for Northeast. So we are having a separate conversation with that community also, similar to this conversation here. So as a follow-up to their recommendation, we went ahead and hired a consultant consistent with board policy 3250, and the consultant that we have is JMT, a reputable company located in Baltimore County, and here we have their representative, Mr. Mark Hadley and Dave Rashia. So we have shared all of the information that was developed during my IPAS. We have shared all of the information that we had before that. There were some studies made before that, and the work that has been done in this area, enrollment projections, and ask them to look at it, give us several different options that we can present to you for your input. We also wanted to emphasize the desire of our superintendent, Dr. Williams, the county executive, and school board. As you'll see, Mr. McMillan is here representing board, for this process to be totally transparent, where we share with you all of the information that we have and take your input and share with the same folks, the board, the superintendent, and the county executive. So I just wanted to give you that backdrop. We have developed a lot of trust and mutual respect with the work that has been done in the past, and I hope that we continue with that. So in the interest of time, I'm going to ask JMT to share their presentation and answer the questions that you have on the presentation. All of the other questions, if they are simple that we know the answer, I'll help you with those answers, or some of our team members here, they'll answer. And if we can, if it needs further conversation with the board or with the superintendent, then we'll put it on the website and follow up in our next meeting. So with that, if you don't have any question for me at this time, I'll pass it to JMT and have your presentation, and then we'll receive questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pete. I'm going to get up, if it's okay, because the computer's a little slow. Baltimore County and the MyPass study have identified 3 schools in this area that need addressing overcrowding, facility conditions, and educational adequacy. The study has been undertaken to determine possible solutions to relieve these issues and enhance the learning environments for the students, the teachers, and the staff. This is a clip from the MyPass study. This is for the Group 2, where it identifies both Dundalk and Patapsco High School as needing additions to meet their current student population. Dundalk is already on the capital improvement plan, so that's not part of the study, but Patapsco is. This is the Group 3 from the same MyPass study, and it identifies in the southeast area Sparrows Point Middle and Sparrows Point High School as needing additions to increase their student enrollment. We're going to conduct this study in 2 parts. The first part is we're going to document the existing conditions and constraints and identify the opportunities at each site or at nearby sites to solve the problem. Then the second part, we're going to evaluate the opportunities to determine which ones are viable and identify the pros and cons of each with regard to the impact to the students and the community. It's very important that both of these issues, both the community and the students, are taken into account. So here's a graphic that shows the location of the 3 high schools that were identified in the MyPass study. We have Patapsco High School, Dundalk High School, and Sparrows Point Middle and High School. Now Dundalk, we've already said, is part of the capital improvement plan. So again, that's not part of the study, but we wanted to identify geographically where they are in the area. So what are our strategies for the development options? Well, we can utilize the available developable land on any of those existing schools. In other words, what land is left that we can create additions, we could create a replacement school, we could do any of those things to make it work on those 3 schools. We have other opportunities where we can use land associated with nearby schools to see what we could do there to shift populations, to create replacement schools, those kind of things. We can utilize land owned by Baltimore County. That's another opportunity that we have in this area. An outside shot is to purchase and use land that's privately owned. If we can identify acreage that's big enough to support these schools, we could try to do that. And finally, we would like more community input in terms of how we're looking at these things. And you'll see some schemes later on that we're talking about. But the community input is very important in terms of what is deemed an appropriate solution and what isn't deemed an appropriate solution. So these are all the schools in the area that we're looking at now in terms of land, and not only schools, but government-owned land, where we could do these projects to see how that all works. So we have General Stricker Middle, Patapsco High, of course, North Point Government Center. We have the Sparrows Point Middle and High School, which is part of the plan, Edgemere Elementary, Chesapeake Terrace Elementary, and Dundalk High. So what's our goals here? Our goals is to develop a comprehensive approach. In other words, to deal with all these schools, look at their learning environments, improve them for the students, faculty, and the community in the Southeast area. To do that, we've looked at the MyPath study to identify those schools that are facing overcrowding, facility challenges, and educational adequacy. We've looked at the review of enrollment in each one of those schools and how that compares to what we call the SRC, the state-rated capacity. What does the state say is how many students should be in these schools? We looked at the previous community input and comments, and we are identifying possible sites in the area for redevelopment. To that end, we've looked at currently 6 schemes, 6 ideas of how to make all this work comprehensively for the area. There are variations of each one of these schemes, but generally I'm going to go over each one of these schemes to show you how these things could work. So scheme number 1, we would look at constructing a new replacement school at Edgemere that would be for both Edgemere and Chesapeake Terrace. Then we would look at constructing a new middle school at Chesapeake Terrace for Sparrows Point. And then we would look at constructing an addition and complete renovation of Sparrows Point for the high school there. So here graphically, the schools involved in this particular option. And again, I'm sorry, I left out Patapsco. That singular school is throughout all these schemes. We will be dealing with looking at additions or addition at Patapsco to bring that population up to where we need it. So you have Patapsco, Sparrows Point Middle and High School, Edgemere Elementary School, and Chesapeake Terrace Elementary Schools. So here's Edgemere Elementary School. The yellow line represents the property line. To build a replacement school there for both elementary schools, we would need to look at how that elementary school could be configured to fit on the open portions of the site, build that school, then move the students from both of those other elementary schools into that new school, tear the old school down, build fields and whatever else needs to happen there, and then that frees up the site. So we would be looking at a school of approximately 116,600 square feet and with a population of 833 students. Once that school is complete, as I said, then the Chesapeake Terrace Elementary School would be removed, and we would have to look at how we could fit on a new middle school for Sparrows Point onto this site. And that middle school would have a 626 SRC, state-rated capacity, with a proposed size of about 92,600 square feet. The students again would move from Sparrows Point Middle School over to this new facility. That leaves this school open for complete renovation and additions to bring it up to 1,255 state-rated capacity with approximately 233,400 square feet of space. So it'll require an addition and a lot of renovations to make it essentially a new school. And then the final portion of it is Patapsco High School. We're looking at constructing one or more additions on this school to bring its state-rated capacity up to 1,760 with a size of 282,657 square feet. The school's already been renovated, but we'll have to add more square footage to bring it up to what it needs to support the student population that it's currently serving. Option 2. We construct a replacement high school at the North Point government site for Sparrows Point. We would then renovate Sparrows Point building into strictly a middle school. And then we would construct the same additions at Patapsco High School. Again, that component follows all these options through. We know we need to do something there. So again, the 3 schools involved in this particular option: Patapsco, North Point Government Site, and Sparrows Point Middle and High School. So here's the North Point Government Site. This building would be totally removed. A new high school developed for that site. State-rated capacity 1,255, very similar to what we talked about if the high school stays at Sparrows Point, but it would be an all-new school. Parking lots, fields, and all that would either be reused or developed new for this particular site for that new high school. The students would move out of there to the new high school. The existing school would be renovated into a middle school for 626 students. And then again, the Patapsco High School would be added on to make it up to its 760 state-rated capacity. Option 3. Option 3 is similar to option 2, but instead of creating a new high school at the North Point Government Center, we were looking at creating a new middle school for Sparrows Point at the North Point Government Center. And we would renovate Sparrows Point into a total high school, again, renovations and additions to make it like new, and then construct additions at Patapsco to increase its state-rated capacity. The 3 schools: Patapsco, the North Point Government Center site, and the Sparrows Point Middle and High School. So again, in this case, the first thing to do, remove the existing building at North Point, create an open site for a brand new middle school. That would have a state-rated capacity of 626. Sparrows Point High School would be renovated and added on to make it essentially a brand new high school for just Sparrows Point High School students. The state-rated capacity of 1,255. And again, as I said, through all these, Patapsco High School would be renovated. Something to keep in mind, something we're keeping in mind, is that these state-rated capacities that are being presented are a starting point. We're not sure how big is big. We're not sure how we can make all these things work. If we can get more students in one area, that may benefit another. If we can't get that many students in a particular school, that may cause us to change some things. So these are where we're starting from for all these options we're presenting. We're not saying this is cast in concrete, but we have to start somewhere. We have to sort of establish a bench line as to where we're going to go to from there. So option 4, construct a middle school at General Stricker for Sparrows Point and General Stricker. Renovate Sparrows Point High School into a high school and construct the additions at Patapsco. So again, the 3 schools involved: General Stricker, Patapsco, and Sparrows Point Middle and High School. Here's the General Stricker site. Much like the first scheme, we would look to see if a new middle school could be built on the open portion of this site. It would have a state-rated capacity of 1,476. Then we would look at removing the existing middle school, creating fields where they are, and then having the kids move from this old building into there and moving from Sparrows Point into there. Sparrows Point High School, like many of those schemes, gets added onto and gets renovated into a like new high school for Sparrows Point students. As I said, Patapsco High School, same kind of thing, consistent through all of these options. Option 5, construct a replacement middle school for Sparrows Point and General Stricker at the North Point Government Center. That takes these two buildings and combines it in one at North Point Government Center. We would land bank the General Stricker School for future adaptive reuse. The renovation additions to Sparrows Point High School would take place like the other schemes, and we would construct the additions at Patapsco as we've done through the other options. So again, the four sites we're looking at and what we're going to deal with them. So North Point site, much like the other ones, remove the existing building, save what we can for the site amenities, and build a new middle school for General Stricker and Sparrows Point, a combined SRC of 1476. Move both those student bodies into this new building at the North Point Government Center. General Stricker is land banked for adaptive reuse in the future. And Sparrows Point is renovated and added on to make it a like new high school for the Sparrows Point students. Again, keeping that SRC at a minimum of 1255. And then Patapsco High School, again, consistent with everything else, shooting for an SRC of 760 and seeing how that plays into all of the other additions that we're dealing with. Option 6 is probably the easiest and the most complex in order to do. We would look at creating a new middle school on the Sparrows Point site, keeping the Sparrows Point High School there also. So you'd have two schools on that site sharing the site amenities. And then having the construction of additions at Patapsco. So again, the simplest, it's two sites, Patapsco and Sparrows Point. The key to the whole scheme here is to how do we get that middle school onto this site in the available land? How do we keep the site amenities with ball fields and tennis courts and all those things? And then if that can happen, then the renovation to the high school can take place and becomes a like new high school. And then, as I said, consistently, Patapsco gets an addition and added on to create its SRC. So these are again the 6 options we're looking at, and there are sub-options to each one of these. We can go on and on and on, but these are the 6 basics that we're looking at now. Community input, if some are better than others, if there's other thoughts folks have, that would be great. I don't want to review this with you all. It'll be available on the Baltimore County Public Schools website for your use and download and review.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Paul Taylor. I'm the Director of Strategic Planning for Baltimore County Public Schools. We're now going to start the question and answer session of our evening. For those of you who are joining us online, we invite you now to type in any questions or feedback you have about the presentation into the chat box. We will respond to as many as we can this evening, and for those of those questions that we can't respond to, we'll develop answers and put them on our website. For those of you who joined us this evening in the audience, I invite you to come forward one at a time and ask questions or provide feedback. Again, we'll do our best, the panel will do our best to answer any questions if they're simple enough, but we may have to wait and put the responses into the on a website.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, and first of all, for allowing us to be here to give feedback. I'm glad that this process is happening in this way. My name is Megan. I have 3 children in the Sparrows Point area, 2 in elementary school, 1 in middle school. So this will greatly impact me because I know it takes some time. My elementary schoolers will probably be the ones that will see the outcome of all of this. I have more of a statement than a question, and that is that and I think a lot of the people here adamantly oppose options 2 through 5. I'm really glad that you showed the maps because I feel like that puts a great perspective on it. It's very clear we live on a peninsula. We're surrounded on 3 sides by water. We are a close-knit community, and options 2 through 5 rip our schools out of our community. We cross major highways, we cross major waterways to take our schools out of our zip code into the center of a completely different community. In fact, our kids would have to drive past Patapsco High School and Stricker Middle School to get to the North Point Government Center site. We won't have walkers. Our kids can't walk up to the field to kick the soccer ball around. Our kids can't walk home from school if they miss the bus. It's a problem. And you said that you want to look at the impact on the students as well as the community. This is going to take a huge toll on our community. I firmly believe that Sparrows Point kids should get to go to school in Sparrows Point, and I hope that you'll take that into consideration when you're moving forward. Thank you.
Hi, so I also moved to the Sparrows Point community. I have 3 children. I actually just purchased a home a year ago for the main reason of the school system, so it'd be very devastating to my family if we had to move across Dundalk. I do, obviously I'm for option 1 or the last option, but I do have concerns based on your numbers because you touch on the point of the new capacity, but what is the current capacity? Because I went off of what I heard. I tried to double check, but you had moved on as to what the new capacity would be. And for Sparrows Point High alone, that leaves less than 500 students to be able to grow into that school. So you're going to be looking at the same problem if you're not looking at what rate are we growing every year, because there are new houses being developed. And there's a new development that's going to be occurring as well. So are we taking into account how many students can grow a year? Will we be at the same problem in 2 years, 5 years? I know it's not an option about redistricting, but we do have people from 21222 coming into 21219. And I know that you guys had said that there's the government center. If you redistrict as well and you keep Sparrows Point 21219 students in 21219, unless you have an exception of a magnet, you could use the other facility that you discussed off Merritt Boulevard by redistricting the Dundalk schools as well. So I'm just wondering if that's been taken into consideration, if at the rate we're growing now and taking into consideration all the new houses that are being developed, are we going to run into this problem in a year or two? When will we be at capacity? And I would just think that, like you said, you had analysis going on, that would be something that would probably have been answered or needs to be answered or will be answered.
So we are going to take your question and we'll provide you an answer in the chat because it's going to take some time to explain that. The short answer is that enrollment projections are prepared every year, and we take the 7th year of projection to determine the size and enrollment of that school. So our expectation is in all our planning that we'll build a school to the latest projections that are available. Okay. But what happens over a period of time, population expand. This school is a very good example. When we built it in 2011 or 12, there was no expectation in any projection that it's going to be such a successful school that we'll have more and more kids. So if that happens to any school, we try to create a flexible design so that we can add to the enrollment projection.
I understand. Yeah, I think I was just asking because your current projection now is that with what the number you gave me and what Sparrows Point is currently enrolled at 700 and I think 95, it leaves you less than 500 students available, like space for less than 500 students to now be projected to come into school. And Shaw's Discovery was just built, and they're already talking about building another development. So I'm sure that that will increase the students vastly.
So regardless of the option that we choose, we'll make sure that the school is built to the projected number.
Okay, so that
Okay.
could change.
Yes, that
Okay,
could.
that's what I was getting at. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I too am from the Edgemere Sparrows Point area. I have a daughter who is finishing up elementary school, and I have 3 grandchildren between the elementary school, coming into the elementary school, and in the high school. I moved there 2 years ago because I wanted that area and those schools for my children. It's very upsetting to know that the area that I used to live in, over in Dundalk area, is where my kid may end up going back to. I specifically chose my home for that reason, because of the community, because of the schools, because of the education. It's just a different environment than it is outside of there. And I echo all of the comments before, because we're going to bus our kids past other schools when we have a wonderful community and environment down where we are, as well as people, the housing community, they're buying up all of this land from some of the farmers that have since passed on. Why not buy that up to build new schools?
Thank you for your comments.
One of the options that I don't see on here, and I was thinking about myself, is all of our middle schools are under capacity. Our high schools are over capacity, and so are elementary schools. What is the potential to turn Stricker, build next to it a new high school, and Patapsco would move there? So you could build to a larger capacity and turn Patapsco High School into the middle school. So essentially swap Stricker and Patapsco. So you could expand high school capacity, which is very much needed, to alleviate some of the Dundalk crowd and some of the Patapsco. Now for Sparrows Point, I'd have to look at the maps again and come up with some ideas, but you'd mentioned school again, elementary school. Chesapeake Terrace, is there a way to separate down there and turn one of those into just a middle school site, consolidate elementary schools, so you keep schools and their kids in their own community, and turn Chesapeake into a middle school, pulling Sparrows Point out to there, and turn the existing high school into an all high school instead of a high school middle school?
That's scheme number one, is to put a middle school at Chesapeake Terrace.
Right, so that's that component, and then the swapping of Stricker and Patapsco is the Dundalk component that I'd...
And we'll follow up with the response in next presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. So I work at the high school. I have for 4 years. My question, you kind of answered, but you didn't. So the projected was 1255, but our enrollment for next year is 1370, if not more. So you're going to be building a building the same size that we already have that's over capacity already. So it's like our school's already maximum capacity. We're busting at the seams. So my question is, your projection is not higher than we're already enrolled. So that doesn't make sense.
So you can be sure that any school that's designed will accommodate the number of kids that are enrolled or number of kids that are projected. And Mr. Taylor, if you want to answer that question.
For the study purposes, we just picked a baseline, but when things develop, every year we do new projections that go out 10 years in the future. And when we have an idea of when the school will be built, that's when Mr. Dix had mentioned the 7-year, then we target the projections for the future. So every year, and as analysis moves forward, we're going to constantly look at the different projections to make sure it's a good fit. Someone also had mentioned before about housing. That's the other thing that we look at. We work with Baltimore County Planning Department, and we identify all the different housing developments that are happening throughout the whole county. And we build that into our projections and make sure our schools are sized the right way.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Excuse me, good evening.
I'm a local business owner, and speaking to a lot of people who came in my facility today, I asked them, will you be at the meeting today? Most of them told me no. They felt this is generally just a formality, kind of like a hoax in a sense, that you guys have already have your decision made up, which is why they chose not to attend this evening or would not be attending. I was a little saddened to hear that because I feel Edgemere is a strong community, and I'm actually a little saddened by the amount of people who chose not to show up today, but hearing so many people feel their voices, it means nothing. What would you say to them if they're at home listening today?
So let me try to answer that question. Even if you didn't come, please submit your opinion to us on chat box, that this meeting is not a hoax, that no decision has been made. We are going through a lot of efforts to listen to you, to see what is viable to do, and then share with you later on as to what we believe we have been able to find so far. So no decision has been made. That is our assurance to you at this time. And I'm being recorded, so I know what I'm saying. It has to be true.
Hi, I have a twofold question. First of all, I'm just wondering where these 6 ideas came from, because from everything that we as a community have been involved in and had input in, that no way, shape, or form was it ever mentioned that our kids would leave our community. So I guess when these 6 options came out, it was I was completely taken aback that taking our kids from our community would even be an option.
So thank you for coming here. That's number one. I want you to know that. And no decision has been made. Again, I want to reiterate that. These 6 options are the starting part of conversation. They have come up, they have been recommended by the consultant after looking at all the data that we have provided to them. And none of those options are finalized yet.
So what is the timeline?
A good question. We are hoping that we'll be able to complete the community process, your input, and be able to analyze before the end of this year. So
The school year or the calendar year?
The calendar year. And the earlier we do, better off we are. But this conversation is going to continue, and we have a board member here. No decision is implemented before superintendent approves it, before board approves it, and before county executive approves it. So this is not one person decision, and your opinion means a lot in our decision making.
Okay, so maybe it's a 3-part question then. So if there is in fact a decision that the community doesn't agree with, then do we still have options
So
moving
we are
forward?
not there yet. We are approaching this problem with a positive outlook, that because of our communication and because of our record of what we have done in this area and the support that we receive from the community, that we will be able to arrive at a consensus. Now, in a lot of these cases, when you try to come up with a consensus, there is never 100% agreement. There will always be folks that perhaps will not agree, but we will do our best to make sure that there is a consensus for that decision.
I can say with 100% certainty, not one person in the Sparrows Point community would agree with moving any of our kids from our community.
So I would echo that as well, but I was curious in options 2 through 5, if the thought of transportation has been considered in that, as well as some of the people have echoed, thinking about transporting students in the way that it is right now. I'm just thinking about all the students who already have issues with transportation as it is to get to Sparrows Point Middle School, elementary schools in the community, and then also having other obstacles. We know what's going on in the community. We know that that trade point is adding more and more folks to our community. We know that that puts a toll on our roads, our highways, all of those things. We heard about the peninsula getting, rebooted as well, and that will impact this project as well. So again, these are all things that, as we're considering some of those options that don't seem like a valid option, when one of the major roadways will not even be available to the Sparrows Point community. So that's just a consideration that I don't know if the team has considered in options 2 through 5.
So the purpose of this meeting and our conversation is to hear you, and we are hearing you. And thank you for coming here, and no decision has been made.
Sure, totally understand that. Just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. Thank you for having us this evening. So, a quick question in terms of state-related capacities. So, currently, where is Sparrows Point sitting in terms of their capacity as compared to Patapsco?
The state-rated capacity for Sparrows Point, when you look at it through the state guidelines, it's a combined of 1,300 something. I forget what exactly it is. And one of the questions earlier was about the population rising above the 1,255. Well, that's a combined high school and middle school combination. So once a new middle school is built or a new high school is built and those populations split, that large school then becomes open to those additional students.
So in terms of that capacity, maybe I should have said percentage. So is Patapsco sitting at, let's say, 70% capacity in terms of the student population versus, let's say, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the number at Sparrows Point was 120% is what I remember seeing at capacity. So I know we're having students who do not, live in the 21219 area code. So has that redistricting been part of that conversation where if Patapsco is not at current capacity, why then are the numbers so high at Sparrows Point High School?
So let me try to answer that. This is the first part of the conversation where we want to listen to you about what options do you like. Our challenge is to create those seats, and once your options are considered, once we create those seats, then there's always a redistricting process. But we haven't gotten there yet. We don't even know where we are building.
Okay, like I said, I was just seeing if the current capacities are actually being utilized in terms of what those buildings can hold.
And those capacity utilization number, we'll make sure that we provide to you in our responses.
All right, thank you.
They
I
are
appreciate
available. Yes.
Hello, how you doing? I'm sorry I came a little unprepared. But if I heard you correctly, in the beginning of your speech, you said you possibly are looking to purchase land that's government-owned, correct?
Potentially, if there's land available that has the size, is outside of the Chesapeake Bay critical bay areas, it doesn't have wetlands all over it. We've done some looking at some properties that are around, and some of them are just undevelopable for the school system, or for anybody else for that matter.
Undevelopable through permits through Baltimore County? Because obviously, depending on who you are and how much money you have, things turn a different direction, if you know what I mean. Like Tiki Lee's, for example, if you're familiar. But anyway, somebody possibly could answer this because I haven't lived in the community as long as others, but roughly 18 acres sit behind Food Lion that butts right up against Sparrows Point High and middle school. Has that been looked into? Because right now it's pretty much used as four-wheeling and a dump.
So that's a good suggestion, and we'll follow up on that.
Now, I'm sure you're going to say Critical Bay, wetland area, because we are on a peninsula and the whole neighborhood is that way.
That's right.
I know, because when I built my addition, I had to go through the processes. But on that aspect, you don't have to change no ball fields, nothing has to be reconfigured as far as field space. So if you guys could look into that, that'd be awesome.
Thank you very much for your suggestion. It's appreciated.
Hi, I apologize. I actually have two more questions. Slipped my mind earlier when I was going on. He actually brought up a good point. We also have Fort Howard. I don't know if that's been looked into as well. There's a lot of unused area that I don't know if has been considered to even purchased. It has more than enough space to build new schools. I know there's a concern about one way in, one way out, but I don't know if that's been considered as well.
Absolutely. So if you let us know the location of the site that you're talking about, we'll follow up on that.
Okay, and then also, I know you touched on earlier about redistricting. When they did their analysis, did they look at those who actually live in 21219 and attend the Sparrows Point School, and what the impact would be if people outside of 21219, aside from magnet school, were no longer attending that school? Would we still be at capacity? Would we still be over capacity? I know that when we looked around online for homes a year ago, and even before this meeting, I had looked at how many homes in the 21222 actually are districted for Sparrows Point Middle, Sparrows Point High, and there were even some for Edgemere Elementary. I don't know if if the analysis had included, if they had looked into just redistricting, if that would only be a problem for Dundalk High, Patapsco High, and then that would be an issue of opening a new school over there versus.
So we'll definitely look at it. We'll look at the numbers. And Mr. Taylor, if you have any information that you can share, feel free to do that.
Well, I don't have numbers for you right now, but the live-in and live-out analysis is something that we do all the time, and it'll be part of this as we get closer to our solutions to make sure everything's going to work.
Hello, back again. In listening, and it made me think a little bit more, like I stated, that I do have children that are at the elementary schools, and at one point before I moved there, my babysitter took care of my child, and she went to Chesapeake Terrace. In both cases, the elementary schools were overcrowded. You're focusing on the high schools. Option one can provide for all of them. So I think that should be considered, because the elementary schools are to the point of breaking, and option one satisfies all the needs that Sparrows Point needs.
Thank you for your comments.
Since we're doing this whole come up 2 times thing, and I didn't have to do it first, but you had mentioned to let you know of areas that we know of. Now, I'm not an expert. I do know Fort Howard has so much land that has just been sitting there. I also know that there's it's tied up with developers and owners and leases and all that, but it's an option. So the Fort Howard area, I don't know what's available at the Sparrows Point Country Club as well. That is another huge piece of land that has been talked about in development and sale and things like that. But I just kind of wanted to reiterate, since you did put buying private land as one of your options, I know using county-owned land is probably the more economical option. It's going to be, less money to spend, but I just want to reiterate that sometimes the cheapest option is not the best option. And so if we have to get into a land battle with a lease owner who refuses to develop on Fort Howard, let's do it. If we have to go after and bid on a piece of property at the country club against a lease owner who wants to build townhomes, let's do it. Let's try and go for those pieces of land, even if it is a bit more expensive, so that we can do what we need to do to keep our kids in our community.
Thank you very much.
Hello, thank you for hosting this tonight. I really appreciate the in-person. I know everybody that's here was here for a reason and not on their computer. The numbers matter for my fellow Sparrows Point neighbors. Thank you for showing up. Local mom, coach, just all around Sparrows Point alumni. My family moved to Sparrows Point when Bethlehem Steel was built. My great-grandfather is tried and true, bless his heart, Sparrows Point all the way. He would never, want anybody outside of Sparrows Point traveling. It's just a little too far, honestly. I walk my kids to school every day. I pick them up. I could drive, but I don't. And I'm teaching them a healthier lifestyle by doing so. And that'd be a little too far, just to be honest. But I love the touch base on just striving for the land. These lease owners, these people that in these properties, it's just a conversation. It's a letter. It's a maybe. It's, hey, we're in turmoil. We need this space. You know, what would it matter? Could you go somewhere else in Baltimore County and build this? Is it really going to make a difference for them to build Fort Howard, Sparrows Point Country Club? The land's there. They're willing to sell it. I don't know what the numbers are, but I think it's worth a conversation. It's worth a letter. I think there's a few people in line for the Fort Howard property at the North Point Peninsula meeting. They talked about, you know, there's a chain of command of who gets it, and that's fine. But I think starting chatter or a letter or conversation that Baltimore County wants to dip in and do that. I mean, I'm sure they have kids. I'm sure they could understand that we need this space and there's nowhere else to build. I know behind Food Line's a little marshy. They brought that up. There's difficulty in developing in the area. Yeah, it's difficulty. Oh yeah, Shaw's Discovery was built on marsh. So it's like somehow people are finding out how to build where it floods. We all deal with that issue. And I definitely think the infrastructure can be done. All of Baltimore is like that. My husband built schools the past 10 years for Baltimore City. He can't be here right now. He's coaching lacrosse. He would be here. And he works for a great company out of DC. He would love to see renovations on these schools. That's where he's at. He thinks if we could finagle a schedule to renovate these schools to create space, that's what would make everyone happy, because we don't want to leave the neighborhood with our homes. We work so hard. He was a plumber speed fitter the past almost 15 years, and he's built these schools from the ground up. And I just, you know, I've seen him like work so hard to get where we're at in our neighborhood because of the schools. I have 3 young kids. They need services at moments. You know, I love the small classroom size. We chose that, or else I would have kept him out in Columbia at Maryland School for the Deaf. We chose to come down to Baltimore County in Edgemere, back where my family's from and where all these families have grown up. New families are migrating in because it's something that's been lost in a past time. It's a sense of community. And the teachers, the coaches, the parents, the community, they literally would love for anyone come door to door and say, this is what we would love. We'd love to keep these kids in the community. That's all. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi, teacher at Patapsco High School for 28 years. 28 years, Patapsco High School has been overcrowded. 28 years, I've been there. We've had trailers, and whoever said 70%, we've been at about 120% for 28 years. What I would like to say, we've been asking for a new school at Patapsco, and if you build it, we'll take those 2122 kids from North Point Village, just build us a new school. Everybody doesn't seem to want them in Sparrows Point. Build us a school, and we'll take that community as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. For those people that don't know, my name is Rod McMillian. I'm the elected Board of Education representative for Councilmatic District 7, which is Essex, Rosedale, Sparrows Point, Dundalk, Edgemere, all through there. Mr. Pete, I'm curious, when's the next meeting?
So we already have a date. Can somebody help me
April
with the date?
what?
April
21st.
Do you? April 21st.
Okay, April 21st. Okay. Now, to me, this is a generational study. This affects 30, 40, 50, 60 years down the road. We need to get the word out about this survey. And you people are and I get excited, so I'll try to contain myself. Right here, you have shown that you're interested enough to be here. If you go out and get 10 or 15 people or more to get on this line and do that survey and express what you feel and what you want, it's not my decision, and it's not what I want. It's what you want as a community member. It's your decisions. And here, I'll give you my phone number right now, 410-687-5242. It's an old Essex hard line I turned into a cell. So you text me, and you give me a word, and I'll call you back. I'll come to your house. I'll sit on your picnic table. I'll talk to you. I'm that kind of guy. I'll listen to what you have to say. Now, I'm going to be blunt. The options, 2 through 6, to me, are not viable options. I don't know how, and I'm not saying that when I looked at those, now I've been told, like option 6, we're in the Chesapeake Bay critical area. And I've had people say to me, there's no way in hell that they're going to build a middle school on that high school site. And if that's accurate, they're having issues now down there now with permeable pavers. So how can they build a middle school on that site? Just that. The other 2 through 5, you know, a school should be a hub for the community. If you can't, those are not viable. People are not going to, who wants their kid to go up the road someplace, out of their community into another community? You don't want that. So I don't think, you know, to me, the only viable one is 1. So it appears that 1 is people are being guided toward 1. I'm curious on this next meeting, if the public came out and said through the survey, you know, these options are not viable here, you know, would you consider the team, you know, changing those 6 options up and giving us something different for people to seriously look at? Would you consider that?
So it depends on the input we get from here. Okay, if you have any piece of land that you think we should look at, if you think we should consider any other item, that's the purpose of this conversation.
Okay. I'm going to throw out West Inverness. Look at that site, West Inverness. It's an elementary site. It's a big piece of property. The Rec and Parks is using it right now. But they're not my ideas. I mean, I'm all about turning over every rock and looking at every possible solution. It's not what I want. And I'm going to throw out something else in a couple seconds. That North Point site. But they've avoided Dundalk. Dundalk's getting the capital improvement.
Dundalk is getting an addition.
Right. They're getting an addition, a $50 million addition.
I don't know the cost. I don't. Yeah.
But they're getting an addition. But here's what those numbers were based on. We voted as a board for that addition. The projection was they were 650 over the state ready capacity by 25-26. I've been told that they're at that number right now in this building. So if that's the case, as soon as they break ground, they're going to be overcrowded. And Dundalk is, and I understand, but when you say high schools and you mention Dundalk and you mention Sparrows Point, you mention Patapsco, and then you say the capital improvement's going to, you know, it's been approved for Dundalk, okay, but we need to look at that. And I'm just going to throw this out. It's not my idea, and I'm not. And one other thing. Dr. Frank Nyhoff contacted me the day after the meeting with an email, and he suggested a piece of property, a state-owned piece of property, down, and I don't know exactly where it is. I'm curious. Have you seen that email that I forwarded?
I saw the email, but...
okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. So you've seen that email, so I'm happy about that. Now, back to Dundalk. Patapsco needs work. We know that. We know Sparrows Point Middle and High School, that out of 175 schools, that's the only school where there's a middle school, high school combination together. Out of 175 schools, that tells you something. So they need to look at those two. And we can't forget Dundalk, because if we don't do something now with Dundalk, then we're going to be behind the 8 ball in a couple years with them. And here's just a thought. I'm just throwing this out as a thought. The Dundalk complex has Sparrows Point right over here. And it's the tech piece, and kids from different schools come here in the afternoon or the morning. And then the other side is Dundalk High School. And they have this together. I'm just throwing this out. I'm not saying it's a cure-all to end all. But on that North Point site, think about like a tech school on that site where, and I'm not saying exclude anybody else, but where the Sparrows Point kids could come, the Patapsco kids, the Dundalk kids, and then let's seriously look at this Sparrows Point side, in addition to the addition that's coming, to see if we can remedy their overcrowding before they open up the doors and they're overcrowded. There's a lot of classrooms over here, and of course that would be a financial commitment to change those up to regular classrooms away from the technical piece. But just something to look at so we don't lose the North Point Government Center site. And then, so we're doing something about Dundalk, we're doing something about Patapsco. They've got 18 trailers down there, and they've got a 16-trailer complex that sits in the middle of their courtyard. And that includes bathrooms and different things and offices. And then they've got 2 more outside for the RTC, so they've got 18 trailers in that. So we've got to look at that. So we've got to look at Sparrows Point Middle and High School. We've got to look at Patapsco. To me, we've got to look at Dundalk, and then we look at utilizing the North Point Government Center. And please, these are not, it's not what I want. That's not what I'm about. It's what you want. And you go back and you get the people to fill out the survey so that the people, and I'm going to say this, so, you know, there's been people up in the other part of the counties that get what they want because they're loud and vocal, and they just persist and just keeping it out on the forefront. We need to start doing that for our communities. And we need to be more vocal, and we need to express ourselves, and we need to get what we want now, because this is one of the few opportunities you're going to have to do it. Thank you. I'm sorry I went so long.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura. I'm on the board of the Edgemere Sparrows Point Recreation Council. I've lived in Sparrows Point all my life, and I'm a real estate agent. I think Dundalk, Patapsco, I was a teacher at Patapsco for 2 years. All 3 high schools need addressed, absolutely. I'm here for my community, Sparrows Point. The 4 options sending kids out of our zip code are just not options. They need to be taken off. And as far as number 6, from the Rec Council point of view, we do not have space for our youth to have extracurricular activities as it is. So taking away space is not an option either. So I would say option 1 is really the only viable option out of those 6. And I would like to add option 2 where we do acquire space. And my question is, this My iPass study came out over a year ago, I believe. There were tons of meetings, stakeholder meetings last spring I attended. There were surveys. We invested a lot of time, and we gave our opinions, and our opinions are not demonstrated in that. So I want to know why isn't Baltimore County Public Schools listening to all those hours of input? That's where the community gets frustrated. We're all volunteers. We all are busy with our kids. We gave up hours to give our input, and they're not reflected. We feel like we weren't listened to.
Well, I am a Dundalk girl, but I have to applaud all these Sparrows Point people. I love it that you guys are out here fighting. Well, I'm just sitting over there, and I'm thinking about, it is true, there is no more space in Sparrows Point. And if I lived in Sparrows Point, we wouldn't want to bring our children out of the community. And my youngest daughter, she went to the magnet program in 9th grade, and it was horrible. I would sit in line for 20 minutes on that road to get her to high school. So I'm thinking, isn't it common sense that you remove Sparrows Point High School as a magnet program? If you don't have space, the school just needs to house the children in the community. Then you have plenty of space, and the other children can go to different magnet programs. Take away that magnet program status, then you don't have to do anything, and Sparrows Point can house its own children. All the people are moving to the community for that small knit, family community. Let them have the school for their children and remove the magnet program, and then the other children have to go where they live. Is that not common sense? There's no space. It should be your school for your families, for your kids, right? Did anybody think about that?
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
All I was going to say is our magnet's only 200 kids, so it doesn't make a huge difference. That was all I was going to say.
Okay, so I'm here speaking on behalf of the Southeast area, as I have done on numerous occasions. I sat through my iPass, I sat through all those meetings, and we made our recommendations, and the board chose to do something beyond that. What I'd like to say is, I'm speaking on behalf of Patapsco, we really need a replacement school. I watched your comments on the Northeast, and one of the things that you said was whether it be a replacement or a renovation, we would like your opinion. Well, we're telling you at Patapsco, we want our school replaced. If you would have been doing an addition 20-some years ago, then that would have been acceptable, but it's no longer acceptable. And since the board apparently has found numerous amounts of money that they can build a new Towson and a Delaney High School and forget about all the other areas, that is ridiculous. And we need to stand up for our schools. And my friends in the Sparrows Point community, I want you to have what you want for your children. I totally want to support that, and I hope that you support us at Sparrows Point, at Patapsco, and Dundalk, and we all get what we deserve instead of what we normally get, and that is not listened to at all.
Thank you.
I don't really have a question. I just wanted to reiterate what everyone said here tonight. I am a teacher at Sparrows Point High School, and Sparrows Point is my alma mater. And I want to keep Sparrows Point in Sparrows Point. That is our goal. So if you came here for community input, you're getting it tonight. By a show of hands, who wants to keep Sparrows Point in Sparrows Point? Raise your hands. So you have that. We can get rid of options 2 through 5. I think 6 will be difficult with the amount of fields that we would be losing with the other option. I definitely support Patapsco. You need a new school. You've needed a new school. I don't think anyone was saying anything about kids moving in places. At the end of the day, the community wants to keep Sparrows Point in Sparrows Point. So moving forward, to save time and money, we can take off the other options and we can just move forward.
We do have some questions that came through on the chat. Number one, that we've listed here, why can't we just rezone kids to relieve overcrowding?
So we'll consider that when we do the future planning. But the message that I'm hearing here, that Sparrows Point wants to remain in Sparrows Point. So I'll let you answer that, the impact of rezoning and how it is done. Can you share that with the group?
Sure. Well, rezoning, we call it also a boundary process. When you have sufficient capacity at different schools and one school or two are overcrowded, then you change the boundaries and you move kids to go to different schools. So that's how redistricting would work, if that's something that was decided that people wanted to do.
And the redistricting is a community-driven process. So what I'm hearing here is that Sparrows Point want to remain in Sparrows Point. Then redistricting is a different type of redistricting here than in other parts of the county.
Right. So if you can't redistrict, then you have to build seats.
So thank you for your opinion. It means a lot to us.
Thank you again for having us again tonight. Just to reiterate what we've already said, I guess in a perfect world, if we went forward with option 1, what is the time frame of how long that process would take? And then number 2, we haven't even brought that up. Is there money already earmarked for this from the county? Because I know that seems to always be a problem. So
the time frame, we haven't gotten to that stage. And once we decide, once we have a consensus on the option, that'll be the right time to share with you the time frame. The money has not been allotted. Money is requested every year. The process is to prepare a plan, submit it to our school board, to our county executive, and to state. And all of that can only be done once we know what we are asking money for. So this is the first step of the process, to agree upon what we want to do. Obviously there is interest out there in all of the groups. As you can see, our board member is here. So whatever options we have a consensus upon, that will be the basis of our request. No, we have not. No. Yeah, yeah. So the first step is to agree upon a consensus, agree upon an option. And then the second step is to go deeper into that option, look at the different design issues that we have, and come up with a cost estimate. And we'll follow through on that once we agree upon what is the best option.
We have a number of questions from the chat. We've reviewed them, and those questions have actually mostly been asked here already. But we do have a unique question. What about putting 6th grade back in elementary school and making middle just 7th and 8th grade? That's how it used to be when I was there.
Me too.
So we can get back on our next meeting to get the answer for that question. That's a curriculum and instruction question. It's an educational question, and we like to consult with them and get their input.
Are the results of the survey public?
Yes, everything that you are talking here, it'll all be public. It'll be
When can we see that?
after all of second meeting is done, right? Is that the right time? Yeah.
And I guess one of my concerns would be that if you put out another survey, that we would see just the percentage of people who agreed or disagreed. And you said earlier that no one ever agrees 100%. And just from the population and the people that I've talked to in the community, I haven't heard one person say that they wanted to go outside of Sparrows Point.
Well,
So my concern would be not saying, I may have a small distrust sometimes with where that will be published and will be made public to the community to see what the outcome of that survey was.
So that survey will be published on our website. All of the comments that we are making, somebody hopefully is making notes of that, they will be published. And your chat comments, they'll be published. It's an open process.
From the survey that you did before, what was the option people were leaning towards when they voted for options 1 through 6?
I don't believe we have done any survey on these options 1 through 6.
Okay.
Yeah, we have not.
Okay.
So is this going to be posted as a survey for everybody to vote 1 through 6?
I don't have the answer to that question.
This is considered the first meeting.
Yeah.
And the options that were thrown up there were purposely thrown up there just to gather some feedback about what is desired and what's not desired. Right.
I said, who's eligible to vote? Are we letting other people in other communities within Baltimore County vote for our community?
So our conversation is with the community, and how do we manage other folks talking about this issue? I don't have the answer to that question.
Well, I don't have the answer specifically, but I do know that whenever we've done a survey, we know what community that individual represented, even though we can't identify the individual. So we know if this particular community voted one way versus that community. So that much we definitely would know.
What is the best way to get our voices heard? Should we petition? Should we, everyone shows up?
So you are doing it right now. Everybody is hearing it. This communication is being recorded. It'll be posted on the website, and you can add your comments on the chat box.
What I was going to say before is that this is the beginning of the process, and when it comes to looking at options, the consultants are going to take your feedback and the feedback that we get online, and then they're going to further do more analysis, change the options, add options. We'll have to pursue some of these properties that you mentioned, and then at the second meeting on the 21st, we should have something that's a little bit more detailed and hopefully more information about the options that you had also recommended. And that's when we would do the survey, after the next round.
So I actually have two questions. The projections that you discussed as to the capacity and where we're at now versus where we project and what the school will hold, will that be published as well so we can check on, so we can see what's projected to how big the school's projected to be, how many students are projected to be there, so we can look and say, hey, Dundalk High School is a fairly new school and it's already out of capacity. And I'm sure somebody did the same study and analysis to see, hey, this is how many students are going now, and here's how many students we project to come, start coming over the years.
So all of our projection numbers are already on the website.
Okay.
Everything that we have is open.
Okay.
It is a totally transparent process, and every year we update those projections in the book called a student count.
Okay.
So you can always get access to it, and if you cannot get to it, feel free to put it in the chat box, your question, and we'll get back to you.
Okay, and then my other question, well, actually, I added another question. Are the projections also including the new development that's going to be occurring? Are you guys taking into account how many homes are there and how many students could potentially be moving in there? Because I would assume that would, instead of a streamline, uptick in students, it'll probably cause a little bit of a jump.
It's a very good question, so I need to compliment you on that. Projections are done on state-approved methodology for projecting. Mm-hmm. So they are reviewed by county planners. Mr. Taylor and his office is in charge of those numbers and projecting, and they are reviewed by state. So it's an acceptable professional process that we use. And they're posted on the website.
And then last question, I swear. You talked about the cost. You don't have the numbers nailed down as to here's how much it would cost to build for X amount of students. We project in over the next 10 years, so many students will be attending these schools, so we have to build it so large, and here's how much it would cost us in today's day and age. I mean, with inflation, we know it's going to be more. So you're pretty much telling us you don't know how big you have to make the school, therefore you don't know how big of a land you'll need, or whether the sites for upgrades or rebuilding will even be big enough, and also dollar amount. So could option one could we go through this whole process and option one be unavailable because of size or money?
So we have a team of engineers that look at the constructability and design of schools. So once we agree upon, or once we finalize what option is best for the community and meets the need of our enrollment, then we start looking at sites. There are engineers here sitting in the back who are expert in looking at the site and see if it can take that size of school. And so we do it as part of the design process.
Also want to respond to the question about housing development. We get information from Baltimore County. Any developer who has submitted plans for development, they share that with us, and we build that into the projection methodology that Mr. Dixon mentioned.
We were just wondering where the next meeting is going to be held.
Do you have any preference?
Yes. It would be nice if it was in Sparrows Point or Patapsco, since Dundalk is not a part of this.
I'm going to elaborate on that. Definitely Patapsco needs a new school, 20 years old, not a renovated, a new one, but this is greatly going to affect Sparrows Point Middle and High School. We would really appreciate it if you have the meeting at Sparrows Point High School. In the community, you're going to see how much the community stands together and how passionately we feel about this.
So we are going to look into, the space and the technology and all that, and so I can't promise the site, but yeah. Okay, so I want to thank you for coming here, taking the time. Your conversation has been very meaningful to us. This is what we wanted, and we are going to take this. We are going to analyze everything that you have said, come back to you with some of the responses to questions that we could not answer. We encourage you to put your questions on chat box. Any other information, If you think of any site that might be available, let us know and we'll look into that. With that, Mr. Taylor, you want to close the meeting?
You've done it. Thank you very much, and thank you all for
So
coming.
thank you very much.